Hello, everybody, and welcome to Heartlight Vedic Astrology. Today, I was going to talk about the full moon or Purnima that's happening 10th of July 2025. This talk is from a Vedic astrology perspective, also known as Jyotish in Sanskrit. Vedic astrology is ancient Indian astrology that's more than 5,000 years old. So it seems like the theme for this moment in time is it takes a village, as in that longer phrase, it takes a village to raise a child. So let's take a look. Note beforehand, the information presented here is for educational purposes only and should not be considered medical, financial, professional, or life advice of any kind. If you are in need, please contact an appropriate professional for support. And you might take a minute or two to read the rest of this disclaimer. If you're new to the channel, Heartlight Vedic Astrology, just a few announcements and orientation. So auto dubbing is now available on this channel in 8 different languages, so you can check out the list here. That might be helpful to some of you. Also, all of my teaching videos on the subject of Vedic astrology are my concepts playlist. They can be found there. Wherever you see a double asterisk in one of my talks, that means I have a teaching video on that topic if you'd like to learn more. Also, my channel is all about playlists. I'm pretty good about organizing my videos into different playlists so that they're easy to find. So like this type of interpretive talk on the moon phases is in my planetary transits go-char list. Also, if you like to learn astrology by looking at different famous birth charts of people, places, and moments in time, I would check out my birth chart archive live 2025 video, which lists all the different famous charts I've analyzed on the channel and the videos you can find them in. The last few videos I've posted, in case you missed any: Sagittarius constellation or Dhanu rashi, June solstice plus the next 6 months, planetary transits or go-chart for July 2025, and then the birth chart for the 14th Dalai Lama in succession. So if you're new to all this and want to get a good foundation or want to get more out of talks like this, which is basically an interpretation talk, the list at the bottom of the slide are the first videos I would look at and learn from so that you get a really solid foundation. All right, so let's take a look at the chart. So here's the full moon Purnima chart for 10th July 2025. The time here is 16:36 p.m. This is Eastern Daylight Time or New York time, the time zone I live in. So if you're not familiar, this is a North Indian style chart. So to orient you, the top diamond in the middle, that's the ascendant, rising sign, first house, or lagna, as they would say in Sanskrit. Okay. So, and the lagna is important because it sets the tone for the whole chart. For a person, it indicates their general physical features, but also their general psychology. And then you can see in the bottom corner of this chart, there's a little 8 there in that lagna. And that 8 represents the 8th constellation of the zodiac, or Scorpio, known as Vrishika in Sanskrit. Okay, so we have a Scorpio rising chart here, or Vrishika lagna chart here. To get to the other houses, you count counterclockwise or up and to the left. So that top in the upper left corner, that upside down triangle with the moon in it, and then the little 9 in the bottom corner, that's the second house. With the 9 in the corner there, that's the 9th constellation of Sagittarius or Dhanu in Sanskrit. Okay, so yeah, let's just sort of dive into some context here. So the day lord for this moment of time is Jupiter, and the Hara lord is Mercury. Okay, so already that tells us quite a bit. Jupiter and Mercury are the 2 communication planets. Jupiter especially is oral communication, and Mercury especially is written communication. Also, Jupiter and Mercury represent education, and Jupiter and Mercury represent news. Okay, so there might be some news, communication going on here. And you can see Mercury is in the 9th house of authority, government, and it's aspecting the 3rd house of nonverbal communication, which is, again, Mercury's written communication. So it looks like there's some sort of written communication going on here. The 3rd house also represents neighbors and siblings, so there might especially be quite a bit of written communication going on between neighbors, siblings, and then from the 3rd house and the 9th house here, government, authority, and even father institutions, okay? And then Jupiter is sitting here in the 8th house of deep psychology, and it's aspecting into the 2nd house, which is oral communication, and Jupiter is the planet of oral communication. So again, it looks like, with Mercury aspecting the 3rd house and Jupiter aspecting the 2nd house, there's a lot of communication going on here. And let's see what else. And then Jupiter, because it's in the 8th house here, the 8th house also represents deep psychology. So, and it happens that Jupiter at this time, the 10th of July, I'm recording this on the 9th of July, and just within like a couple hours here, Jupiter is going to come out of combustion. So Jupiter's been combust for almost a month. Jupiter, when a planet goes combust, you don't see the outward effects, like the external manifestations of the things that planet represents. So Jupiter represents things like children, it represents teachers, it represents law, it represents fairness, balance, banking, generosity, diplomacy, charity. Okay, so it's a lot of people might have been feeling like, things just weren't really fair. Okay, especially over the last month or so. The other thing is this Jupiter is in a nakshatra, and a nakshatra is a lunar mansion. There are about 27 of them. Every night the moon passes through a different one, so after 27 nights you get a lunar month. And this Jupiter is in a nakshatra called Ardra. Okay, Ardra is symbolized by a drop of water. That drop of water can come from a storm cloud, so like lightning and thunder and heavy rain and wind and all this sort of thing. So a lot of stormy energy. And then that drop of water can also be represented by a teardrop. So there's sadness associated with Ardra, and also psychology associated with Ardra. So this, combust, unseen Jupiter is in the 8th house of deep psychology in the storm cloud sadness energy. Okay, so this can be like, again, really upset, frankly, emotionally upset that there hasn't been much justice or peace or diplomacy, or again, it could be things like a child you're not seeing, or uh, like a teacher you're not seeing, that sort of thing. Right. So there's quite a bit of emotion here. So we're picking up this 8th house energy as well. Um, so yeah, so then what do we have here? So then the dasha period is the planetary period. Planetary period indicates planets that are, you can think of it as more active or influential during a certain time. And so the current dasha period for this full moon is Venus, Mercury, Venus, Saturn. So we're picking up more of this Mercury energy. Okay, so again, some sort of looks like written communication between government and siblings, neighborhood, that sort of thing. And Mercury is in a nakshatra called a Shlesha. Shlesha is symbolized by a snake. So snakes, they can inspire fear. But there's a sort of like alert feature to snakes. When you see one, most people are like, "Oh, yay, a snake," and they just pass on by. Like it kind of grabs your attention, maybe holds your attention, kind of, maybe throws you off guard, or just sort of as a bit of a surprise. Because usually snakes, for the most part, like to stay under rocks and things like that, like out of view. They like to hide a little bit. So the Sashlesha energy of a snake, this can be like sudden, some snakes, they bite, they hiss, they, do all sorts of things, or they hover, and then they sort of make you watch. So with this Ashlesha energy, there is usually this energy of like, attention grabbing, also mesmerizing, also sudden, unexpected, um, possibly fearful, but also like it can also be healing. Because like the two snakes that make that, what do they call it? The caduceus, or the staff of Mercury, that represents medicine in a lot of places in the world. There can be this, because snakes, transform, they shed their skin and, that sort of thing. So there can be transformative healing energy related to this written communication. But from what I'm seeing here between the authority and then, in the 9th house and the 3rd house being like siblings or neighbors, it could be like some sort of like a written alert going on, like maybe in a neighborhood or something like that, or between parents and siblings, potentially. Or the 3rd house can also represent friends. So this, again, this could be like even like a text or email, or written flyers and stuff like that, that are giving some sort of alert. Okay. Um, So also we're picking up Venus energy. Okay, so Venus is in the 7th house of partnerships and independent business. And Venus is really quite strong at the moment. Venus is in its own house, so it's what we call swa. That brings it strength. Planets that are strong tend to give the most of the planets. If planets are in ordinary condition, then it's sort of like they might give a little bit here or there, but nothing really maybe so significant or extraordinary. But when you have something like Venus in its own house, especially when you have it in a positive house, which is where it is, being in one of these middle houses or kendras in the middle of the chart, that's a very strong Venus. So, um, yeah, Venus is very strong, and Venus represents things like social grace, diplomacy. It's the practical advisor. It's also like creation, creativity, and beauty, aesthetics. Um, so a lot of really nice things come from Venus. Romance, even pets, travel, the finer things of life. And Venus is not, is already lovely on its own, especially when it's strong like this in its own house. But the other thing is that Venus happens to be in a nakshatra called Rohini, which is considered to be the most kind of luscious, attractive, seductive type of energy. So we've got this, like, I don't know, almost like Venus on steroids type of energy in the 7th house of, again, spouse-like partner, business partners, but also path forward in life. Okay. The only thing here is that may sound like super great, and for the most part, it is super great. Venus, when we have Venus, which represents spouse, and the 7th house, which represents spouse, when we get that combination, it creates what we call a karako nasha. Okay, and karako nasha indicates that there are actually problems with that planet. So here we have some problems with Venus. Now, for the most part, it looks like that might be, there's still a lot of strength here with Venus. So it looks like Venus is resilient, and will probably potentially will overcome whatever challenges come its way. Plus, we also see that Saturn is aspecting from the 5th house onto Venus, and Saturn is a planet representing delays, obstacles, long-term problems, anxiety, fear, doubt. So it looks like there might be something making Venus here, or the partner of this, like if this was a person, as lovely as their partner or spouse may be, it looks like there's some nervousness going on here. And also maybe even like you could even say sort of restructuring or maturation process going on here, because Saturn represents, long-term restructuring. Um, so there might be like maturity to this Venus. So it's not just like all fluff and, cupcakes and, that sort of thing. Because Venus can represent that stuff for sure, because Venus represents, even things like refined food and, that sort of thing. Um, so yeah, so we're picking up Venus energy, which is pretty nice. So, it looks like, again, in terms of business partnerships or general partnerships, that's a really nice, for the most part, situation there. So again, if this was a person, it looks like, the people that they join with in different causes and projects would be, for the most part, ideal. And then we get Venus, and then we get Saturn. Okay, so Saturn, which I already sort of mentioned, is aspecting Venus, so it's creating some drag or problems, delays, obstacles on Venus, although it is also providing maturity and endurance, I would say. But Saturn is in the 5th house. The 5th house represents things like romance, it represents children, it represents counseling, it represents teaching. And Saturn, as I mentioned, is a planet representing delays, obstacles, long-term problems. It can literally indicate death. And Saturn happens to be in a nakshatra called Uttar Bhadrapada. Uttar Bhadrapada is symbolized by the back legs of a funeral pyre. Funeral pyre, flames, ashes, things turning to ash, combustion, destruction, releasing the soul from the body, But with Uttar Bhadrapada, there's also this notion of having sort of taking a step back or being a bit objective. And, this can be like trying to contain the chaos of a huge transformation process, such as cremation. Or this can be the surrender to like conscious surrender to massive change or shift going on. Okay. So again, it looks like this Venus, has some gravitas here, some maturity here, also endurance here to help advise and help, bring things together and also move things forward in a positive way. Okay, but there is some difficulty here in this, at least in the smallest sort of sub period here. And then, so these planets together, Venus, Mercury, Venus, Saturn, will bring difficulty, to partners, but also again, communication here. Okay. So then this dasha period is switching to Venus, Mercury, Sun on the 21st of August. So the Sun is almost the exact opposite energy of Saturn. Okay, Saturn's about delays, obstacles, and that sort of thing. Sun is all about vitality and energy and that sort of thing. The only thing that was in this chart, Sun currently is in the 8th house of long-term issues. And the Sun represents things like father, it can represent authority, head of state like president or king. And so, and then again, we're getting back to this, Jupiter and Mercury energy because Jupiter's in the 8th house, but then the Lord of the 8th house is Mercury, which we started with, right? The day Lord and the Hora Lord, our Lord. So there's a lot of emphasis on this 8th house of deep psychology. Again, some sort of stormy, deeply internal, stormy energy going on here related to law, children, teaching, and, again, it's affecting the Sun. The Sun was in Ardra as well, but just in the last few days it's come out of Ardra, and now it's in Punarvasu, which is symbolized by a quiver of arrows. So there's still this sharp, pointy, quality and weapon quality as well to Punarvasu, which Sun is in. Because of that kind of cycling energy of pulling the bow out from the quiver on the back and shooting it off and picking it up and putting it back in the quiver, there's this kind of cycling energy. So there can be this like going back and forth by some sort of authority. And the thing is that the Sun is the lord of the 10th house in this chart. The 10th house is related to uh, daily activity. Okay. So there can be long-term problems and obstacles, delays related to this constant activity that's going on in the 10th house. 10th house also relates to like reputation. Okay, so we're basically evolving into this like ideal partnership, communication energy, leadership. Okay. So then the Lugna nakshatra, the rising sign nakshatra, is Anuradha. That's pretty nice too. That's kind of like the Venus in Swa, Venus and Rohini energy, even though there's some problems, because it's karako, bhava, nasha. Anuradha, that nakshatra is symbolized by a victory gate, but victory through alliance, building alliances, building bridges, rather than like the nakshatra before it is Vishaka, which is victory at all costs, which is sort of like, it can be like a burn baby burn as long as I win type of energy. So Anuradha is all about building alliances, which again we're already picking up because this Venus is so well placed for the most part. I mean, the only thing sort of creating some drag on Venus is Saturn, but Saturn is still providing some again gravitas and endurance here. It looks like, although it's probably also providing some heaviness. I would say heaviness, delays, obstacles. Yeah. So that's pretty nice. So the whole chart. So again, the Lugna nakshatra, that Anuradha energy is going to reverberate through the whole chart. So that's part of what we're dealing with here. And again, that's part of why it seems like the theme for the moment is it takes a village. Because again, there's some pretty strong and nice, diplomatic, social grace type alliance, victory through alliance that's going on, and between the Lugna nakshatra Anuradha and this really well-placed Venus, you're seeing it twice over. So that provides what we call grid karma, fixed karma. So, it looks like through group activity, there will be some, victory. Although again, there will be some delays and obstacles. It may not be complete victory, let's put it that way, but overall, it will be a nice moment, in terms of getting positive results, I think, creating positive results. The moon nakshatra is in Purva Ashada. Moon is up in second house. Second house represents speech, family, inner circle, assets as well. Purva Ashada is symbolized by a winnowing basket, so a basket that you shake back and forth to separate the edible parts of the wheat from the non-edible parts. So there's this like sorting energy that happens. The moon represents the emotional mind. There's also the moon represents the public. So this can be like public emotional sorting going on here, especially regarding family inner circle, maybe assets as well. And again, this might involve speech as well because Jupiter is aspect in the second house, and Jupiter owns the second house, being in Sagittarius. So this can be public remarks regarding sorting through some sort of activity or emotional public event. And the Sun Nakshatra, again, it mentions in Punarvasu, so there's that cycling energy going on. So just a bit of other context here is that this particular full moon is known as Guru Purnima in India, and it's celebrated by Hindus and Jains and I believe Buddhists as well, maybe Sikh. I'm not sure about Sikh, but several religions, major religions in that part of the world. And guru means teacher, and not just sort of like, I think in the Western world, we tend to think of a teacher as, in a more formal setting in front of a group of students at their desk and that sort of thing. But it's really anybody who brings light to darkness, to dark spaces and enlightens those spaces to make them better. So there's this notion of this holiday of honoring teachers. And again, we're starting off with the day lord being Jupiter. Okay. And then, as I mentioned, again, Jupiter recently was combust. And Jupiter symbolizes things like children and teachers. And since Jupiter is in this Ardra energy in the 8th house, this could be sadness related to children and teachers you can't see. Okay. And again, we had the Saturn in the 5th house, which represents children, and it also represents teachers. And Saturn is there again in Uttar Bhadrapada. Surrender to potentially the release of these people. Okay. And then there might be some sadness related to it here. Okay. So there is a challenge here, but again, overall, it seems like there's a lot of positive efforts to transform the energy here. I almost thought for a minute, well, more than a minute, like a little while, I was thinking that the theme of this moment might be like sunshine on a rainy day. But I think the deeper, kind of story that's coming from this chart is, again, it takes a village. So let's take a look at what I'm going to go through now is sort of house by house, see what we see. And after that, I'll go through what are called the amshas or sub-zodiacs or divisional charts, which give us more details. So depending on what level you're looking for of information. So the Lugna here, again, the rising sign, ascendant, first house, all different names are the same thing. We have a Scorpio, Vrishika, rising, or Lugna here. Scorpio is a fixed water sign, so really, like, water is related to emotion. So there's like, unwavering feelings here. And Scorpio is ruled by Mars, and Mars is aspecting its own sign from the 10th house. So that's going to bring strength, again, more strength to the first house. And because the first house is strong, it'll bring strength and resilience to the whole chart, or the whole person, if we were looking at a person here. Mars happens to be in a nakshatra called Purva Falguni, which is symbolized by a hammock or a marital bed. So it tends to be a lot about, like, again, the finer things of life and enjoyment and that sort of thing. Mars is a rebellious, active planet. So it's can be a bit erratic. It's a fire planet as well, and it happens to be in a fixed fire sign of Leo. which is ruled by Sun, which again I mentioned the Sun, the spouse landlord of the 10th house, has gone to the 8th house of deep psychology. So this could be like, like somebody who enjoys, physical activity, potentially, or even like technology, because Mars is soon, within the next couple weeks, going to be crossing K2 here. K2 is in the nakshatra of Uttar Falguni, which is also symbolized by a hammock or marital bed. But that nakshatra has, in addition to enjoying, the finer things of life, also has this notion of enjoying life, but with a certain goal in mind. Okay, so when you get Mars and K2 together, as I've mentioned many times in my videos, you get a lot of explosive energy. Okay, so the thing is, what we call the Lugnatia, the ruling planet for this chart, is Mars, because it rules Scorpio. Scorpio is the rising sign here. And Mars has gone to the 10th house of, again, 9 to 5 work and reputation. It's also what we call an artastana, or house of material gains. So this is somebody whose main focus or motivation is, creating material wealth, but does so in probably quite unconventional ways, because this K2 brings this like unusual, it's a south node of the moon, brings this unusual, hidden, unexpected energy. And it's like Mars, but like even more erratic and hidden, unexpected. So especially when you get these two together in the same house, and they're sort of both fire signs in a fixed fire sign, this can be like, literally putting out like one fire after another, like dealing with one problem after another. It can also be quite, again, like explosive and dangerous even. Um, but there's some enjoyment here. So again, if this is a person's chart, I would almost think that they have some sort of unusual physical job that's sort of like a bit of an adrenaline junkie. Like they enjoy the kind of unexpected physical nature of their work, even though it might be dangerous. So, what else do I have here? Let me just make sure. Okay, so we talked about Mars and K2. Oh, and then this Venus, the really massive Venus, is aspecting the Lugna as well. So, like, this person has this physical, probably dangerous job that they, enjoy, day job that they enjoy, but they have this Venus, massive Venus energy aspecting the Lugna as well. So they're also going to be kind of a practical advisor in a very positive, attractive way. Okay. And the thing is, Mars, which is in Purva Falguni, the star of Purva Falguni is Venus. So there's quite a bit of, even though this person might seem like on the surface like sort of a, I don't know, chaotic go-getter, uh, risk-taking type of person, they have like their Lugnatia ruling planet, and this mess is soaking in this Venusian energy, and then we have Venus aspecting the Lugna. So, there's like this soft, compassionate, gentle part of this person as well. And that's also like their interest in these sort of unusual physical activities as part of their work and reputation is a way, it's like their contribution to this alliance, you know, um, that's happening here. Yeah. So, so yeah, it looks like it's for the most part well motivated, even though again it might on the surface look like something a little bit different. Yeah, so we put all these things together. So again, Mars aspecting its own sign, the Lugna, you get strength and resilience. There's kindness here, there's diplomacy here. But again, this K2 and Mars and the fixed fire sign in the 10th house is like nonstop putting out fires at work. Um, and it literally, this could be like a first responder type, like a fireman or something like that. Um, so also, let's see, long-term issues developing from short-term problems. Yeah, so Mars is also the lord of the 6th house. So yeah, so it looks like wait, hold on a second. Um, Okay, I have to review that. I'm not sure. I'm sure there's a reason why I put it. I don't remember what it is because again, these things tend to be complicated. But you can see Mars is the lord of the sixth house. The sixth house represents acute issues and also enemies as well. So this could be somebody who deals with, literally enemies or, again, acute problems. This could also be like a cop, military person potentially. Um, yeah, but this Mars, especially since Mars is with K2 and Mars owns the sixth house, this could also be like a really chaotic schedule because the sixth house represents daily schedules. Also, K2 and Mars can represent accidents, injuries, infections. So that might be part of, what they're dealing with on a day-to-day basis, potentially. And the other thing is K2 and Mars can be kind of separatist energy or turning away from certain things. So this could also be like, even though there might be some enjoyment here, there might also be like a lack of enjoyment. It's almost like a um, separation from enjoyment, separation from Uttara Falguni, Purva Falguni, the finer things of life, sort of getting down, in the muck here potentially to help people out. Um, and again, I mentioned adrenaline junkie first responder type, it looks like. So we have a bunch of yogas and um, related to the chart. So yogas are planetary combinations that give kind of meta effects to a chart that go beyond just analyzing the planets and the houses and that sort of thing. So again, this massive Venus, it creates what we call a malavya yoga, which is a pancha, maha, purusha yoga, which translate is like the five great beings. So there's a lot of strength and power coming from this Venus, which again is the seventh house of spouse-like partner, business partners, and path forward. Um, then we have a kesari yoga. So there's a networking positive network yoga here, strong network yoga going here because of relative positions of the moon and Jupiter. We also have a kala sarpa yoga here. That's an ambition combination. That's when all the planets, for the most part, are on one side of the Rahu Ketu axis or the other. So, and we also have a Subhabayachari solar yoga here. So we have what we call a Shubkartra yoga around the sun. Um, Usually we just say Shubkartra yoga around the lugna, but if we were to spin the chart oriented to the eighth house, we would have a Shubkartra yoga, which is a literally like a positive scissors um, uh, type of. Well, that's the definition, the translation. The literal translation is positive scissors. But what that means is Mercury and Venus, two natural benefic planets, are flanking the house that the sun is in. And so that's going to cut through those positive benefic planets, natural benefic planets are going to cut through obstacles for eighth house matters. So that's also, positive thing. So again, it looks like there's some loss here, but it looks like, again, between the really strong Venus and the Anurata and the Lugna, that there will be some, ability to work through the obstacles that are presented here, which clearly there are obstacles presented here. So you put these yogas together, you get creativity because this massive Venus, again, this would be like a very potentially creative person, or at least a very creative spouse or partners, um, and networking, ambition, and support. So those are nice things to have. The chidra grahas are planets of vulnerability. They can literally indicate sensitive spots for somebody in their life. And also, like an Achilles heel, and so vulnerability points. So they happen to be Mars, Saturn, Sun, and Jupiter here. So Sun and Jupiter, again, that's the eighth house here. That's leadership potentially of some stormy emotions, also children and teachers. Mars, again, is this sort of, active energy. But again, it can be enemies, it can be siblings. Mars represents those things. It can be actions. And then Saturn, too. Mars and Saturn also represent property and land. Mars and Sun represent leadership. So you can see the different permutations here. Jupiter and Mars represent law. So you can have different sort of variations of the uh, mixing and matching of these planetary energies. So Saturn can be obstacles and delays, Mars initiative, Jupiter is law, Sun is leadership. So there can be, like, from this, you might get like work difficulties and relationship sadness, that sort of thing. Um, and then we have some planets related to money. The yogi for the chart, which is a planet representing wealth, is Jupiter. But Jupiter's in 8th house, which is generally considered a negative house, but it does represent other people's money as well. So there might be some sort of charitable um, network going on here, people donating money to this cause, support this cause, to ameliorate this cause. Jupiter is also aspecting its own house in the second house, which is assets. So looks like there's probably some, positive assets here. Yogi, which is a planet representing lack of wealth, is Sun. And again, the Sun, there might be like kind of a lot of expenses related to this daily work of like first responder type work that's going on here. And then the duplicate yogi is another planet representing all that's Mercury. So again, the yogi and duplicate yogi, two planets representing, positive association with wealth, are the planets we started with, the day lord and the hour lord, which are all about communication. So there's some difficulties here with work, but also probably strength and wealth of some kind coming from communication and news. Okay, so then on to the second house. Second house lord is Jupiter again, and this Ardra storm cloud energy. It aspects its own house, making it strong, protecting it. We have a full moon here, and this house is aspected by Saturn, which is in Purva Ashada. I need to change that. Sorry, it's an Uttar Bhadrapada, and also the Sun as well. So there's a leadership energy here, some sort of chaos or challenges to family, maybe assets. Although assets will be protected by this Jupiter that's aspecting its own house. Not so much people, though. Okay, so and there's going to be some sort of speaking or sorting through process here, um, related to long-term stress of body, mind, through work. Because again, all this chaotic 10th house energy is going to the 8th house, and then the 8th house is projecting in the 2nd house. So we're talking about the difficulties of doing this rescuing first responder work and the mental and physical toll it has, and how do we lead, the group into a better situation so it's not so taxing, on the body and mind, it looks like. Okay, but there's stress involved here, sadness involved here, some notion of protecting. But also, we could also see this as potentially publicity of this chaotic situation, stormy situation that's going on. Okay, then the third house lord is bhavam, Saturn, meaning the third lord has gone 3 houses away. So this is going to be not just like one big communication, but multiple communications, especially through siblings or neighborhood. Excuse me. And then again, this Mercury and Ashleisha, the snake energy, is affecting the third house. So many written communications regarding delays, difficulty in delays. They're, again, sudden alert words that Mercury and Ashleisha, rolling through sibling groups and friend groups and neighbors. The fourth house lord is Saturn. Rahu's there in Purva Ashada. And then it's aspected by Jupiter and Mars. So this can be some unusual disruption, even though there's ambition, there's some unusual disruption at home. This could be like the fourth house, not to get too morbid here, but this is a situation that's happening in the United States, is that this is like a more, I guess, concrete example of the qualities demonstrating here through the planets, is that recently we had a lot of flooding in the state of Texas. And flash flooding, so it just like whipped through the area, I guess from the Guadalupe River, and the flooding happened so fast that a lot of people were lost, including, I think it's like 27 children from some summer camp. And I think over 100 people have been lost, have died from this flood, and there's still something like 160 people missing. So I could definitely see that storyline playing out here. The other thing is that actually the United States is a Scorpio Lugna. So, again, you could see this as a transit chart for the United States and all Scorpio rising people, whatever entities. But, and that already, like what I've been talking about, like Jupiter with combus, children you can't see being lost, troubles in the fifth house, children, um, troubles with leadership, rescuing, first responder energy. You can see how all that specifically playing out in the United States. Also, did I already move on to fourth? Let me back up to the third house a little bit. So it's kind of funny. I woke up this morning and had some unusual impulse to go get some food from the grocery store. I usually don't go like early in the morning, but I was like, okay, it was some breakfast food, which again is not something I do very often. And I had this notion yesterday, and I kind of ignored it because I was like, why do I need to do that? And today I decided to follow it because it's such an unusual sort of impulse for me. I was like, well, maybe there's some reason, maybe it's actually my intuition, suggesting I go. So I went outside, and there's this big yellow sign at the end of my driveway. And apparently, one of my neighbors, he was been having trouble with the town for years. I mean, this is like ongoing. Has put up all these yellow signs saying no trespassing, which is, I think, one, debatable that it's his property because that's part of the issue that's going on with the town. But the other thing is that he's put these signs all up and down the road, which is clearly not his property. So again, you get this like written alert message over and over and over again. And the other thing is that, I mentioned like with this Jupiter and Sun, Mercury combination in the eighth house and the storm cloud energy, this could be somebody who's really struggling with mental health, and I know that this particular neighbor has. So that's why they do some of these unusual things, and a lot of why they're in trouble with the town, because they do things that are inflammatory and nonsensical and hard to, manage or whatever. But I'm just guessing since I just found out about them this morning, because I'm like innocently going to the grocery store. I was like, oh, well, here's another example, tangible example in my neighborhood where it looks like, I'm guessing if they haven't already, the neighbors are going to get together and do something about this because these yellow signs are all up and down the road, like saying that everything's his property. So yeah, it's a interesting situation, but again, just another example here. And so you might be experiencing something like that, potentially for yourself. So yeah, this fourth house energy. So the Lord is Saturn, Rahu's in Purva Ashada. So this could be. So the reason why I backed up and told the story about the kids being lost through the flood and then my neighborhood is that, again, not to get too grim here, but this fourth house can represent home, and there's some disruption here with this Rahu being in Purva Ashada, the front legs of funeral pyre energy. But again, there's some ambition here. So this could be literally like digging and bailing, and looking for some of these people who are missing. Okay, again, not to get too whatever about it, but yeah, just it's like, it's all showing up here. That's what kind of mystifies me about Jyotish is it's like, this is developed more than 5,000 years ago, and it's, you put together 9 planets and 12 houses in different patterns, and you can see these stories playing out today. It blows my mind. So a little bit more about the fourth house, just to wrap that one up. So unusual disruption at home, maybe mother happiness. Fourth house also represents happiness. But again, it might. So and then Jupiter is aspecting this. Jupiter in the storm cloud energy, Ardra energy, is aspecting this fourth house. So it might be, sadness at home, with homeland and local land, and and happiness is hard to obtain because of this. Rahu's also going to bring this like sort of mysterious energy. So there might be some ambition to, um, dig here, because Mars is, this active Mars energy is aspecting it there might be some activity going on, but it might be sort of like a little bit of a goose chase energy, because Rahu brings this unexpected, even though it's ambitious, and Mars is a rebellious, active initiator planet. It can bring a bit of a goose chase, which is, I don't know. I mean, how do you even start with that? I don't even know. I'm sure the experts on, dealing with disasters like this have some plan, hopefully. But, half of it's going to be happenstance, and timing, get to people while you can still help them. So then the fifth house lord is Jupiter. Again, it's in the eighth house of long-term problems. And then the Ardra energy, recently combust. We have Saturn here in the fifth house and also aspected by Mars. So Saturn and Mars together brings some sort of like, action plan, engineering type energy here. Okay, so there, and fifth house is advice. So some sort of plan or engineered effort to dealing with children who are lost or in trouble. Um, again, the fifth house also represents romance. It represents teaching. And Saturn represents anxiety, doubts, and structure. So anxiety and to structure. I could also see this being a ritual. Saturn represents like tradition, and Mars represents like action. So like a traditional action, like a ritual. Ritual managing chaos of children or teachers who have disappeared. Romance partners. This could also be problems with blood sugar, frankly, because the fifth house represents the upper GI, and the lord of that is this Jupiter, which was combust in Ardra. So there could be storminess. Jupiter represents equilibrium. So there can be like unusual blood sugar issues going on here. And that may be part of what's causing this Mars and K2 kind of chaos going on in the 10th house. That might be part of the storminess, and the difficulties here of keeping up with the, duties, responsibilities here. Besides it just being the nature of the work being chaotic on its own, there might be like again, this Jupiter, where this Pisces in the fifth house is a dual water sign. So again, fluids going in different directions, and also mixed emotions here. So when you get this all together, it could be like a stormy, liquid, structure, a lack of structure, or going in two different directions, like not all streamlined and orderly. So again, this could also, as I mentioned, and Pisces here is also can represent two different bodies of water, or and Saturn and Mars represent land. So this could be land that's underwater, like flooding, literally, and then sadness of loss of children. And Jupiter not just represents children, but can represent humans, so loss of humans. So not just the 27 kids, but all the people who are lost. Yeah, so far that we know of, or at least we haven't found all of them yet. Yeah, so again, I'm just saying like rescue mission regarding lost children and water, and again, it represents at least for the United States, Texas floods going on. So yeah, there you go. Okay, so on this slide, all the stuff on the left is the same on the right, or my notes for the other houses. So the sixth house, the Lord is Mars. Again, that's going to bring a chaotic schedule to daily work. Also, the work might involve enemies, debts, employees, pets, adopted or stepchildren. Again, also difficulty in erratic eating and digestion, because the sixth house represents the midgut. The fifth house represents the upper GI and abdomen. So again, there's unusual chaotic actions related to these things going on a day-to-day basis. Then the seventh house again is this massive karako, bhava, nasha Venus, and aspected by Saturn. So this is probably, I would say this is probably the strongest house, and then maybe the second house, I would say. Yeah. So again, Venus is a diplomat. Artists, especially being in Rohini, gardener, because it's in Taurus. This could also be a creative, independent business. But then some challenges, but a strong, beautiful, literally could be a very beautiful, attractive partner or partners. And challenges here coming from Saturn. This could also even be like an advisor, like the spouse could be like an advisor regarding beauty or clothing, or health, you know. And because Venus is the practical advisor, this is going to be, and Venus is not only the lord of the seventh house, so it's really strong there, but Venus is the lord of the 12th house of losses and expenditures. So this could literally be somebody who has the ability to turn negative situations into positive, you know, which is sort of like a superhuman type of ability, you know, to transform all that negative energy into a positive direction. You know, and this could also be, since Venus is in its own sign, like if you spun this chart and made the seventh house the first house, and we read the chart for the spouse or spouse-like partner or business partners or way forward, it's like this is all about like you know, self-regulating and creating beauty out of chaos. You know, I mean, it could be an artist even who does that. You know, like a lot of people write songs through because of the troubles that they've experienced. But they just, it's almost like they're that sort of magician or alchemist who can do that. You know, not everybody has that ability to, they just sink far lower and lower and lower. It looks like this person, you know, in the seventh house, represented by the seventh house, is sort of a lighthouse to people, but also, again, not just this person, but again, if we're seeing this as like a business or, again, an alliance, since we got the Anurata energy, this group of people who are coming together to deal with this issue is like a lighthouse in this sort of dark mess. So, like, if we're talking about the Texas floods again, this is like a bunch of really well-meaning people coming together, giving donations, charitable donations of their time or, you know, clothes or whatever, houses, you know, helping out in any which way to help ameliorate this, you know, situations. It's like the neighbors coming together. So again, it's like it takes a village. You know, it's not just like one person saving the day here. It's just the whole group here is just a really kind of light, bright, shining type of, energy coming from them. So there can be for the person or group some troubles with, in groups because Saturn is in the fifth house for the Lugna here, but it's in the 11th house from the partnership. So again, there can be trouble going on here with groups. Also, income. So there might be problems with making this happen for financial reasons, or the partner is having some financial problems. But the other thing is, again, if this was just like a person that we're looking at rather than like a group, this is a really nice energy between these two people, the native and the partner, because Venus in its own sign and Rohini, like a very loving bond. And both of the people in this, again, relationship have this as part of their lugna, you know. It's stronger since it's swa for the partner, but, again, even the Scorpio person, again, they might seem more daredevilish, risk taking or whatever, swashbuckling. It could be swashbuckling. Yeah, it could be pirate. This could be a pirate. If we went back well, I guess pirates still exist, right? I always think of pirates in the past, but this could be like a pirate. This K2 and Mars and this that. It's kind of funny to think about that, but it can be. But it's almost like more than a pirate. It's probably like a Robin Hood. Like somebody who does these kind of unusual deeds, but for the greater good. Like giving back to, stealing from the rich to give to the poor. Not that's the situation, but or like the Three Musketeers, fighting and swashbuckling. It's like all for the good of the cause to protect the king and the crown of France. It's almost like that kind of energy. So yeah, more about this Venus, creative problem solver, because it's a practical advisor, loving bond. There might be some distance here because of the Saturn. Saturn can create some. So there might be some love relationship, romantic relationship on board here, but there might be some distance because this situation, current acute situation, is redirecting their energy a bit. The couple's energy a bit. And there can be some family chaos and loss, sadness for both of these individuals because we have that Jupiter and Ardra back and forth on the 2-8 axis. The second house for this chart is the family or inner circle for the native, and then the 8th house is the family or inner circle for the spouse or partner here. So they're feeling it, but they're doing their part to again get a group together to turn things around best they can. The other thing is, since I mentioned the United States, and the United States is a Scorpio Lugna, rising sign, and Venus is Lord of the 12th house of laws and expenditures. The 12th house also represents import-export, international import and export. And so, the U.S. President Donald Trump has just alerted people that they've been going back and forth for months now about imposing tariffs on other countries, and it's been slow going, probably not what they had hoped for, but they haven't had, I don't think they've made much progress, and so he just made some announcement that he's going to impose some pretty high tariffs, like 25% on some of our big trading partners. And so somebody was writing in the news that, basically what's happening is since, um, the U.S. is sort of on the offense here, part of the way that some of these countries are dealing with this is like to team up together and create some new, trading partner relationships because the U.S. is being pretty demanding of literally every country. And so they might actually, these countries that were sort of like meant to, I think, be bendy here in terms of the U.S. demands are now forming alliances. And so they're kind of cutting the United States out of the network. So, I don't know, it looks like it might be backfiring because, again, this alliance that's going on here is quite strong and powerful and, again, creative. So you can see that. You could also see that in this chart as well if we were going to see this as a transit chart for the United States. Yeah, some new strong creative import-export alliance is being built here. Yeah. So, yeah, then the 8th house lord is Mercury. We have Jupiter and Ardra, the storm cloud energy. Sun is here, and it's aspected by the moon. So, Jupiter and moon, a lot of intuition, but again, sorting, cycling, psychology, sadness. There's a lot to sort through here. And also, it's a Gemini constellation here, so a dual air sign. So, a lot of thoughts back and forth. Again, more tumultuous energy rather than like a earth sign, to ground it or, and again, this is regarding, duty, because all this 8th house stuff is going to feed back into the 9th house of authority. So, or guru or father. So, all of this sadness and emotional turmoil going on is being felt at higher levels. And again, this could be regarding duty, the duty of teachers, or this, and even like if the teachers and stuff. The interaction with teachers has been positive and supportive and helpful. Like, sometimes teachers are kind of like substitute parents for a lot of people. Or can be seen as sort of like a additional or spiritual parents and things like that. And so, even with the loss of really important mentors or teachers in our lives, that can feel like a really big hit, almost like losing a parent. And so that's what we're seeing here as well. And again, this Sun and Jupiter, especially with Jupiter being combust, this is like a master teacher, master transformative teacher. Yeah, that may have been lost here. Then the 9th house lord is Moon. There's a Swa Mercury. It's Swa not because of sign, but Swa because of star. Mercury's in a Shalation. The star of a Shalation is Mercury. So this is a very strong Mercury. Again, sending out alert warnings, which is, again, the U.S. president. He just said, if you guys don't abide by these tariffs, then we're imposing them on August 1st. So it's sort of like, a little bit instigating, and again, mesmerizing and maybe shocking, sudden, he's pushing the envelope essentially. So, but this could also be like an authority speaking unexpected words regarding family and unhappiness, because again, this moon in the second house of speech is going to draw this ninth house energy into the second house, which again is like families and still like also drawing in how do I say, like it's like stacking up, like the eighth house energy is going to the ninth house and the ninth house energy is going to the second house. So it's like some authority speaking about all this eighth house kind of tumultuous energy, which is again, regarding family or unhappiness, children in the storm, or people in the storm. Then the 10th house Lord is Sun, and that's gone to the 8th house. So some, again, long-term problems with daily activity. Mars there in Falguni, again, in that suave Venus. So it's fairly well-intentioned Mars, I would say. Although it's still erratic, because it's with K2, and K2 is an Uttara Falguni. So work is unusual, chaotic, possibly dangerous. But there's some level of enjoyment or purpose here. So even if this is like, this could be bluffing. This energy can also be bluffing because Mars was in Maha until recently, when maybe some of the stuff was, sort of being developed. So the idea of like this, and Mercury just recently went into Ashlesha before it was in Pusha, which is symbolized by a cow's udder, which is very stabilizing and nurturing. So the energy has shifted. Mercury's gone into a more, you know, uh, kind of aggressive, potentially position. And Mars is still chaotic, but it's gone. The star of Maga, where it was Ketu. So Mars was just really super erratic. And now Mars may still seem erratic. It is on its own, but it's still with Ketu. Um, Mars, by the end of this month of July, will cross K2 and move out of the same sign, which should really calm things down, hopefully. But just by Mars going from nakshatra, where the star is K2, to a nakshatra of Venus, especially when you have a really strong, nice Venus and Rohini like this could also be bluffing, like sort of seemingly aggressive, but, again, just pushing. The other thing is that, again, if we're talking about like trade and stuff like that, um, again, K2 and Mars are Purva Falguni and Uttara Falguni. So the hammock, that's all like luxury goods and nice. Most of this trade stuff, I mean, a lot of it's just stuff I don't know that people want, but maybe don't really need. I mean, on a day-to-day basis, I mean, probably half of it is like essentially luxury items, which is Venus. Venus is luxury items, and that's the lord of the 12th house of import-export here. So, and I'm sure the luxury item folks probably are getting the heavier hits with these tariffs because, it's like they want to dig into the profitability. And the other thing is they don't want to choke those goods too much, the flow of those goods too much because, or at least the day-to-day requirement goods, because people need those and then they'll choke off their own, population. So it's probably mostly the luxury good people who are forming their own alliances, new alliances here, creative alliances here, is what I'm seeing. So, yeah, then the 11th house lord is Mercury. So again, and it's aspected by Saturn. So troubles with groups, troubles with income, and the 11th house energy is going to get sucked into the ninth house of authority. So this might be like speaking to troubled groups about long-term problems, bringing attention to government authority, publicity, income, that sort of thing, which is kind of that warning that the U.S. president gave to its trade partners. And then the 12th house lord is Venus. Again, this is like a partner who can turn losses into positivity, some sort of alchemy going on here. This could also be like advice about better sleep, which seems very specific. But this literally was another thing that happened to me. Yesterday, I was speaking to somebody who is a Scorpio Lugna and who is a first responder. And they recently had their schedule change, which is very chaotic and causing all kinds of problems. And so I guess, and they typically change their schedule depending on, the local needs or whatever. And so now they're on the night shift, as of a week ago or so. That's flipped their brain around, and they're having trouble sleeping and getting rest. And so they not feeling the best, let's put it that way. And then they also said, it's hot where I am right now. It's summertime. So, they also have trouble sleeping at night because of the heat. And so I was giving them advice about sleep, like, doing some deep breathing practices and like some cooling blanket I found, and, doing some gentle stretching, to, shift the internal, physical burden a little bit. Nothing too strange. But so I literally was giving a first responder sleep advice. So that was kind of funny. Um, but again, I think for the U.S., being a Scorpio Lugna as well, a lot of this is about overseas market stuff. And so, yeah, we shall see. So anyway, that's the main chart. And now I'm going to go through the Amsha's subdivisional charts and see what else we can see, get more detail on this for those of you who are up for it. Oh, just one more thing before I completely forget. I didn't put it on the slide, so I added it in after. But this Mars in the 10th house, it has Digbala directional strength, so it's quite strong. So that's going to strengthen Mars. And again, since it's aspecting the Lugna, will bring strength to the whole chart and the person, physically and psychologically, to deal with all this chaos that's going on. Okay, so now sub-zodiacs amshas. So first off with relationships. So again, what these are, if you're not familiar, this is different ways of essentially slicing and dicing up the main chart to get more nuance, but they're mostly used for timing. So I put at the top here at the dasha period, again, we're in the current, at the time of this full moon, it's going to be Venus, Mercury, Venus, Saturn, more influential at this time, and then it's switching to Venus, Mercury, Sun, August 21st. And so those are the planets that I circled in these charts. Okay, so that where are they? Are they in positive houses, negative houses? What's aspecting these sorts of things will give us an understanding of what direction things are heading in. Like it's mostly we're switching from Saturn to Sun. Okay, it's like what is a Saturn subperiod going to bring versus a Sun sub? Are we moving in a positive direction, negative direction, that sort of thing? Okay, so here on this slide we have relationships. We have the Navamsha D9, spouse and partnerships at the top, and the Dragon a D3 for siblings. So for the D9, all grahas are well placed. Venus is in the ninth house of, again, authority, institution, leadership, teacher, and Mars is the disposer or landlord of that house, and it's aspecting there. So again, there's going to be strength, real strength and pioneering energy here. This could be, and also the ninth house is religion, so it might be like the spouse again and the main planetary period is Venus. So again, the spouse is, really leading the charge here, it seems. Then we have in the fifth house, we have Mercury there with K2 aspected by Saturn, and then the lord of that is Jupiter, which is debilitated in the sixth house here. This could be about speaking about separation from children, or, again, advising about difficult issues. Saturn is in the second house, also aspecting the eighth house and fourth house. So again, that's going to bring difficulty of speech, home, mothers, psychology, and it also aspects the 11th house, so groups as well. And then Sun is in the, the 10th house here. Yeah, so this is going to be working as a stabilizing leader, because the second house, or the 10th house is Taurus, so it's all about stability and grounding energy. And then the lord of that is Venus, which isn't particularly strong, but it has a strong landlord. I can say it has a strong house, not a strong landlord. It has a strong house because Mars is aspecting its own. So there is, underlying strength for this leadership that's going on in the day to day. activity. Then the Drake in a D3 for siblings. Well, this is a Virgodama Lugna. It's also a Scorpio rising, meaning this chart's important. All the grahas are well placed. Venus is debilitated, though, in the 11th house. So this could be like, not great advice for the public because Saturn is also aspecting there. So there's going to be delays in getting good advice to the public, potentially. This could also be problems with income. But still, because the grahas are well placed, they're in positive signs. They may not, these planets, like Venus debilitated with Saturn on it, is not going to give great results, but since it's still in the positive house, it'll still be okay. It'll be decent, but not fantastic. Like, it's not going to be, this is not the same Venus that's in the main chart. Okay. But the thing is, Venus is exalted in the 5th house. So, where Saturn is, and what do we have? Yeah. So there's going to be some pretty good practical advice regarding difficulty of children. Just maybe the advice is not filtering out to groups, or it's about the problems with organizing the groups to move in practical ways on the advice that's given. The advice might be good, but then how do we execute it? That could be the problem. Mercury's in the Lugna, so right now it's all about communication as a sub-period. And then the Sun is in the 2nd house, or not, is in the 4th house, aspecting its own sign in the 10th house. So the 4th house is like literally potentially underground, but then the Sun, aspecting the 10th house there, it's going to be again almost like the Sun in the 10th house in the D9. There's a lot of leadership going on in day-to-day work, and working for the public here. So, yeah. So again, since we had a Mercury aspecting the 3rd house of siblings and neighbors, this could be friends, siblings, neighbors who are, actively trying to get, information out about how to help the situation. Then on this slide, we have the Saptamsha D7 for children, the Dwadashamsha D12 for parents, grandparents. So if, we're looking at the children's chart pretty early on, but if you follow through the rest of the charts here, this is the most challenged chart of all the ones I'm going to look at, which is not surprising given the main chart. So you can see Venus and Sun are not well placed. And again, Venus is the main planetary period. And then Sun is the sub-period, starting August 21st. We also have 6 out of 9 planets in negative houses. That's what we call Balarisha Yoga, which can indicate difficulty in childhood. Sometimes when we see, often, almost always, when we see a Balarisha Yoga in native chart, it usually means that there's difficulty in childhood, and sometimes there's so much difficulty that people don't survive childhood, or they end up passing away fairly young, like in their 20s. So Saturn is exalted in the 5th house. So again, advice about difficult situations. But again, at least it's exalted, so that's a positive thing. There's also a parivartana exchange of houses with Venus, so that's also going to bring again this strong Venus. This is going to be a massive 5th house of counseling people in practical ways through difficulties and challenges related to kids, potentially. And then the Sun is, Saturn is debilitated, though, in the 11th house. So again, there's some problem again, maybe with organizing clubs and groups here, or income, like having the money to do what they want to do the rescue mission, potentially. This could also be difficult news and devastation of groups, trying to keep morale up here. Sun and Mercury are on the 6-12 axis here, so acute problems and losses, expenditures, and the 2 mind planets, Moon and Mercury, intuitive mind, analytical mind, and 12th house of losses. So this could be leading, troubling communication and public loss, emotions, and thoughts, and stuff like that. So yeah, this is a D7 here in children. It's pretty challenged. Then the Dwadashamsha D12 for parents, grandparents, all the grahas are well placed. Rahu's at the top here in the Lugna. Rahu represents maternal grandparents, so there could be problems with them, especially. Venus is Swa, though, in the 11th house, so again, it might be parents and grandparents, it's sort of like word of mouth, people recruiting their neighbors, recruiting their friends and groups and stuff like that. That's really helping. Like, it might be that the main authority or government isn't able to do it, but it's through, because again, the communication's broken down. I mean, like the Texas floods or whatever, it's like communications. People even have phones or whatever, so you have to go through an informal network, essentially, to recruit more people into this positive network. So Venus is Swa, okay, and then Sun is in the 4th house again, aspecting the 10th house. So again, so Sun and Moon in the 10th house, leading the public, and Mars is there as well. So the two leadership planets in the 4th house of home, underground, lineage, family, happiness. It is being aspected by Jupiter into its own sign. And again, we've got a Pisces going on here in the 4th house of dual water. So again, this might be, Mars represents land. This could be, land underwater, flooding. So the Sun in 4th house, disruption of homes, families, children. This could be an accident as well. Leadership, though. And Mercury and Saturn are in parivartana in the 3rd and the 7th house. So difficulty with communications, a separation of partners. It could be, yeah. So again, it looks like parents and grandparents, like the elders of the community, are working their informal network to bring leadership to, because formal communication systems have broken down. And just if you're noticing so far, Jupiter, even though we're not running Jupiter and I haven't circled Jupiter here, again, Jupiter representing children, parents' law, not children, teachers' law. Jupiter so far in all 5 charts is in a negative house. Okay, so the native and all the relationship charts. So this is a real strain because Jupiter again is in the Ardra storm cloud energy, and it just came out of combustion. So even though it's not explicit here, there's a lot of stress and strain with people involved in the relation in this system here, in this effort here. Okay, so on this slide we have career and education, the Sadamsha D24 education at the top, then a Dashamsha D10 for career, reputation, status down below. D24, Venus and Sun are not well placed, so and you can see there's 5 planets in negative houses in this chart. So yeah, there's going to be challenges here to education. I'm sure there's like disruption in education and various situations, like in Texas again, like just that's one summer camp where a lot of kids were lost, but then the whole area, it's like it's gonna, education is gonna be, the brakes. They're gonna pump the brakes on that. Looks like there is a parivartana exchange of houses between Venus and Saturn that'll make those planets stronger. And then you can see Venus, Sun, Mercury, which are 3 planets we're running here. All 3 of them are aspected by Saturn. So again, communication, leadership, just general stability here is being disrupted by this momentary Saturn. So there's going to be issues with leadership, relationships, emotions. And then we have 5 planets in negative house, another Balarishta yoga. So this is, in a fragile state, and then Sun and Venus and Saturn on both of these, they're in 6th house and 8th house for short and long-term issues here. So this is education, and getting this back online isn't going to be a quick fix, let's put it that way. And then we've got Saturn, Venus with K2 So we've got Venus Swa in the 8th house of psychology and long-term problems, endings, changes. But you have 4 malefics on it. Like you have K2 Rahu with it conjoined. You have Saturn aspecting through Parivartana. You have Mars, Swa Mars aspecting. You have a Swa Mars aspecting from the 2nd house. You have a Swa Saturn aspecting through Parivartana. This is a lot of like heavy duty, unusual land problems and engineering problems going on here with education. Like probably all these schools are being gutted, through this situation here. Then the Dashamsha D10 for Korean reputation status. Well, I would assume because Mars was so strong in the 10th house and Venus was so strong in the 7th house, this would be pretty strong, and it is. Saturn is not well placed, but at least it's Swa, so there's some protection here regarding acute issues, although there are troubles. But you can see Sun aspects its own house in the Lugna. That's going to make the whole chart strong. Mars is also aspecting the Lugna, and so the two leadership planets are aspecting the Moon, public and emotions. So this is a public leader here, which, again, that's what it looked like, especially as a first responder potentially. Venus is Swa in the 10th house, so again, some sort of consultant, practical consultant here, although there's some unusualness here, maybe an unusual situation. Mercury is also strong, communication and organization very strong. And then Rahu and Mars in parivartana, unusual ambition, leading home. And this is like a pretty strong, chart here. And then you can see Jupiter is in the 3rd house again, in a negative house, not particularly strong, nothing on it. So again, Jupiter, neighborhood or sibling children lost or isolated. 7, 8, 9. Oh, actually, you have Saturn on Jupiter, so that's never mind. So actually, you do have Saturn. So there's gonna be difficulty with children here, and people. It could be people again. Jupiter can be humans in general, not just children. Yeah. So there's all this strong positive energy, but Jupiter's kind of on the fringe of all of this, So yeah, but I would expect the D10 to be strong from the major, and we're seeing it here, so it's confirmation. Then here on this slide we have income and assets. We have the Ekadamsha D11 for income, but also public support, and then the Chatratamsha D4 for assets. So in the D11, Saturn is not well placed, but it's Swa. There should be some protection here from losses. All the grahas are Swa in this chart or have a Swa dispositor. So this is a very strong chart here. We have Saturn Swa in its own sign in the 12th house. Venus is not Swa, but it's with its dispositor in Sagittarius, so that's strength. That's a Parvata yoga. Then we have a Mercury Swa here, and Mars is there, so the dispositor of Mars is very strong. And then we have Ketu, Rahu, Sun, and Moon in the Moon sign. So everything is super strong here. It's kind of crazy. This is one of the strongest D11s I've seen. It's pretty wild. It stands out for sure. So in the native chart, and I was like, well, this is different from the native chart because we had Saturn aspecting the 11th house, which would indicate delays, obstacles with income potentially. And so that may be true, but D11 is also public support. Like, this is a really important chart to look at if somebody's involved in some sort of public politics or like elected position, in which case this is a massively strong time to get involved in politics or elected, maybe because of this ad hoc communication system that seems to be building, like sideline conversations that are creating this bigger momentum. It might be like informal, but like still important. Like maybe, if there's a problem in your neighborhood, the neighbors get together and then your neighbor down the street gets elected to head up this new project for the neighborhood, like that kind of thing. This is the kind of person who's going to be chosen for that leadership position. Then the Chatra Shamsha D4 assets. We have another Virgodala Lugna, so that means this is important. So assets, again, this could be, again, in the main chart, there was physical strength, but also some sadness here. So there might be like some change or worry about assets and having enough potentially. But you can see Mercury and Saturn are not well placed, but they are in parivartana here, so that makes them stronger. But they're both in either 3 or 8th house, which indicate changes and endings. And Saturn represents property. Mercury can represent contracts. This could be like the end of property contracts or change in property contracts here. Also, this could be change in communication systems, which I mentioned. It looks like they're um, potentially, on the fritz, getting the word out about these challenges. Sun is aspected by its disposer of Jupiter, and Moon and Saturn. This could be like a leader of public division of land, like land boundaries, or again, land that's underwater here, if we're talking about the Texas floods. Then Venus is aspected by Mars and Saturn. So again, those are the two property, land planets, Bhumikarakas. So there's advice about property here. It looks like there's some assets related to that that's going on. Changes related to property assets, which could be, again, if we're talking about flooding, it just, all the water ruined your house and all the stuff in it, or your car or whatever, you know. Yeah, so that's going on. This might also mean, I think that was a problem back in LA when they had the fires going on, is that the fires happened and then pretty quickly after that, because it burned down a lot of land and houses in LA not too long ago. And then what happened was there's problems because the insurance people were not paying up, or they changed their policies very quickly to make it really expensive for people. So that could be the Jupiter and Ardra energy going on here. Like flood insurance, like how is that gonna, or property insurance, how is that gonna be affected or change or squeeze people out, that kind of thing. And here on this slide, we have the health amshas. So we have the Tajik Shashtamsha D6 for acute issues, the Tajik Ashtamamsha D8 for chronic issues, and the Bhamsha D20 for strength and resilience. Venus is not well placed in these first two charts, and that's the main dasha period. So, and they're both in the third house, so we can expect changes and endings here. The D6, Venus is not well placed. It is aspected by its dispositor, but the dispositor is the sole enemy here. So there's, again, a contentious relationship here in third house, siblings, neighbors. This could be a change in law action here. Yeah. Kind of like what I mentioned with my neighbor putting up signs and stuff like that, posting up signs. Saturn and Mars are aspected by, are aspecting Mercury. So notice of talk of land and home. Sun is Swa, Moon, and plus Moon in 11th house. So again, leadership, public group. So there's strength here, actually. Again, there's some changes and endings, but at least an acute phase here. I would say there's mostly strength being shown here. And the second chart, Chajik Ashtamam Shadiyat for chronic issues, all the planets are well placed again, except Venus. But they're pretty strong. Venus is exalted, Saturn's exalted, Mercury's exalted, Sun is with its dispositor Rahu. So these, there's strength here as well, probably stronger than the acute issues. Venus is aspected by Mercury and its sole enemy Jupiter again, and it's also in a Shubh Sankhya Yoga with Jupiter. So Venus is fairly strong, but again, Mercury is going to be debilitated in the Pisces in the third house here. So again, there could be some positive change related to neighbors or siblings, communication alerts, and that sort of thing. Although there may be some troubles here as well. But at least there are three natural benefics involved here, which is nice. So there might be an issue, but hopefully that means things would potentially get resolved without too much falling out. Then the Bhamsha D27 for strength and resilience. Saturn's not well placed, but again, that's sort of a blip on the screen here because it's the smallest sub-planetary period. It does aspect its own sign in the ninth house, so this could be a lot of authoritarian bureaucracy, but strength. And again, structural trouble with neighbor property here. Sun is Swan in the fourth house, so leadership of home. Mercury is Swan with Venus in the second house, so communication, relationships, family, inner circle. So this is what I was saying, kind of like with that parents subchart of like, because sun is strong, that could be father. Moon is there. What's moon? Oh, and I didn't see that. There's actually a parivartana. Yeah, I'll put that in. There's a parivartana between the moon and Saturn, which is going to make things stronger. So actually, like again, uh, there's going to be a lot of strength and resilience here through communication, through more informal networks rather than, because again, looks like there's some trouble with, you know, transit, travel. Because Mercury not only can represent communication, but can represent travel and like roads and things like that, potentially. So it looks like infrastructure, and Saturn can represent infrastructure because of the changes in infrastructure. Like you have to go through informal networks, and the informal networks are very strong, actually. So that's going to help overcome, again, issues going on here. And so that's what I was seeing here, acute long-term changes to relationships, diplomacy, and practical advice, but there's strength and resilience here overall. So yeah, again, it looks like for the most part, again, not everyone, like the Texas floods, I mean, a lot of people have been lost. But because of this alliance here, more people will be helped um, than if that didn't happen. So let's just put it that way. Okay, so then here we have spirituality and worship. At the top, we have the Panchamsha D5 for innate spirituality, and then the Vimshamsha D20 for formal worship. So at the top here, Mercury is not well placed, so there might be an unusual, this with Rahu and aspected by Jupiter. So it could be unusual change or ending of communications. Saturn Saturn is aspecting both Sun and Moon. Oh, I think I have that backwards, but anyway, Saturn's being aspected by both the Saturn. Sun is being aspected by both Saturn and Moon in the fourth house. So this could be challenges to mind, emotions, leadership, both day and night. This is like a, you know, yeah, there's not a lot of rest for the weary here. Let's put it that way. It's very active, especially with that, the lugnatia for the native chart, Mars and K2. In the fixed fire sign Leo in the 10th house of daily activity, and that Mars is aspecting the fourth house of night activity, and it's the Lord of the sixth house of daily routine. It's like just, 24/7 essentially being active. Then we have here. So Mars and Jupiter and Parivartana, so unusual strong speech and action, legal, maybe even. Venus is in the ninth house. It aspects its own in the third house. So this could be like a, fairly strong leadership, because Mars aspects its own house, from when it's in Parivartana with Jupiter. So Mars will aspect the ninth house from the second house. Um, so there's going to be strong transformative leadership and advice here going on regarding this neighborhood potential issue. We're talking about innate spirituality. Again, there's a lot of involvement, let's say. Um, yeah, and then the Vimshamsha D20 for formal worship. Venus is not well placed. Mars and Jupiter, Mercury, K2. Oh, so there's two parivartanas, Mars and Jupiter again, Mercury and K2. So this is like, unusual speech, action. So we're getting the same thing over and over. Unusual speech, action, and news. Sun, Mars, Moon in the 10th house, daily leadership action. Saturn, Swan, the 11th house, clubs and clubs, groups, income. Venus in the 6th house. Venus in the 6th house, so practical advice regarding acute issues. What I was seeing here with these, it's like, regardless, it's sort of, there wasn't big differences between the D5 and D20 here for innate spirituality and formal worship. It looks like no matter what you're flavor is or preference is, or maybe you kind of do one or the other depending on the situation. It seems like the since they're both fairly strong, it looks like uh, the real issue is just to get involved as a human being. Like, it's not really about innate spirituality or, formal religion or whatever. It's just like a universal ethics about getting involved and helping people out when they're in trouble and then helping to spread the word, like doing your part of just being like a conscious member of society. It's almost like this, what I'm seeing here with these charts, it's almost like this kind of situation is above any sort of bifurcation of personal spirituality and formal religion. Like, I think at the base of all of them, it's just about being a good person and helping out and trying to ameliorate, help your fellow human being. So, yeah. Okay, so there you go. The full moon Purnima happening 10th of July, 2025. Thanks so much for all your support for my work and the channel. I appreciate all the ways you guys do that. So supporting by liking and subscribing, listening, sending in donations, posting lovely comments. That's all appreciated. Again, all my teaching videos on the subject of Vedic astrology are my concepts playlist. They can be found there. If you want to see some famous birth charts I've analyzed, check out my birth charts archive list 2025 video. If you're interested in individual birth chart reading, I do offer them. You can email me at heartlightastro@yahoo.com for more info on that. And I do have another YouTube channel on natural health and medicine. The name of that channel is Nature Source Care, and on that channel I talk about Ayurveda, traditional Indian medicine, as well as yoga, so other Vedic arts, and other paradigms of medicine like homeopathy and naturopathic medicine. So that's out there too for you. So as always, I hope you found this talk helpful, useful, and interesting to you as you learn to navigate the energy cycles of your own life. All right, so take good care and namaste.